Hello, I'm Dr. Zaius from the Planet of the Apes, of course. My favorite podcast to listen to is Talking Apes, even though it's hosted by filthy humans.
Now listen to me, Caesar. There can be only one talking chimpanzee on Earth. The child of the two talking apes.
20 years back. From the year, Senor Mando, when the two talking apes arrived on Earth.
And we believe that the male and female talking apes have come to us out of the future.
A month before the talking apes arrived on Earth.
From now on, you have but one assignment. To find that talking ape.
He's a performing ape for my circus.
A talking ape?
That idiot!
This chimpanzee...
Get out a retraction immediately. Announce that the talking ape has been apprehended and put to death.
Hello to all you chimps, gorillas, orangutans, and even you damn dirty humanoids. I am Richard Woloski, and I want to welcome you once again to Talking Apes. We hope everyone has had a great summer. It's been a while since our last Monsterpalooza episode, but with so much ape funness coming our way, we hope to get more episodes out more frequently. Now, if you are a first-time listener, let me catch you up. This is our spin-off podcast from Talking Apes TV, where we recapped and broke down each episode of the live-action and animated Planet of the Apes TV series. But since there are no more TV shows to discuss, we are now branching off and talking with authors, actors, and those in the Planet of the Apes fan community. But now, before I continue with this episode, which we've been planning since February, I have to introduce my co-host and fellow ape, Mr. Marco Gushewitz. Hey, Mark!
Hey, Rich, I gotta tell you, I'm excited to be back. After all, this has been a big year for Planet of the Apes. There have been several 50th anniversary screenings all over the country. The VR game Crisis on the Planet of the Apes, which I personally can't wait to play, as well as lots of merchandise, such as the SDCC exclusive Forbidden Zone playset from Reaction Figures. And there's also the new graphic novels from Boom Studios, including the just-released graphic novel, which is based on Rod Serling's original Planet of the Apes script, and it's called Planet of the Apes Visionaries. Now, this graphic novel was adapted by Dina Gould, and we'll be giving our spoiler-free review in this episode. And our past guest, Andrew E.C. Gasca, just posted that he's got a new book coming out in November called Death of the Planet of the Apes, which ironically deals with the death of Taylor.
All right, now, Mark, also in this episode, we will finally, with an emphasis on finally, discuss the Planet of the Apes 50th anniversary events held at USC for their Visions and Voices series that ran from February up until August.
Well, I thought we were not going to do that anymore. We're just going to keep putting it off and off and off.
Hey, do you wanna do that?
All right. No, let's not do that.
No, even I would come for you, and I know where you live.
Yeah, you'd probably tell everyone where I lived, and I'd have a big mob outside my apartment.
Wait, hold on. I'm going on social media right now and just tweeted out your address. There you go.
Gonna get a bunch of vampires and werewolves showing up?
Oh, already on it. All right, now, in case you missed any of these panels, we're going to play some highlights from a few selected presentations. But to see the panels in their entirety, go over to our Skywalking to Neverland YouTube channel. You can see everything.
And once again, we have to break a little promise that we made. I'm so sorry. Or actually, I should rephrase that. And once again, Richard's going to have to break a little promise that was made.
You know what? We know where you live.
You go ahead and do it, because they know where I live. I don't want them coming after me. They come after you.
You know what? We had put up on social media that we were going to be reviewing the Tim Burton film, which we said we would never do. But we said, hey, give us your comments. We put posts on all of the big ape Facebook groups and say, hey, give us your reactions to this Tim Burton mess so we can read them on the next episode. Well, you know what, Mark, since this episode is just going to be so chock full of apeness, we didn't want to bury this within everything else, and I think this should be its own standalone episode. Now, we do have your comments once again, and please feel free to keep adding to the comments, and we're going to go through some of them. Can't go through all of them because, wow, there was a lot of comments.
Yeah, and the fact that there were a lot of comments is key, because at first I figured, well, this is the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes. How much time do we really want to spend on it? But the reality of the situation is the Facebook comment where you mentioned doing the review got more comments on it than any other posting we have ever put up.
People are passionate about hating this film.
And that made me realize that we really had to spend a full episode on this, because this is something that the fans don't want just 10 minutes on. They want us to really, go into it. We're not going to go into it scene by scene, because you're not going to make me do that. But I think if we have more time, we can really, really explore where the movie fails, but also where it kind of succeeds. There are going to be some people surprised by my own personal reaction, because it's actually not completely negative. I have some positive things to say about it, too.
Yeah, this was one of the films that we had seen at USC, and yeah, I admit there were a couple of things where I thought, okay, over 17 years, I can get past this or past that. Not a whole lot, but a couple of things. So yeah, like you were saying, we want to devote a whole episode to this and not just do it within 10 or 15 minutes, because, as you know, we are not able to do anything in 10 or 15 minutes. So please, all the apes out there, accept our most humblest apology. But Mark, we do have a surprise for them. William Conlon and Tom Berman just sent us a message with a Making Apes update. It's been a while since we've heard from them, so it'll be good to see where we're at.
Hey everyone, this is Will Conlon, director of Making Apes. I'm here with the one and only Tom Berman, and we're giving you a little update on how the project is going. So, Tom, where are we with Making Apes?
Well, we've got some wonderful footage, some wonderful interviews, and this is the fun part. We're going into post-production, and it's really exciting. I'm having a ball.
Yeah, we can't wait to get this film edited and share with everyone. We're looking at a December screening for all our Southern California supporters. You can still go on Indiegogo and support the campaign. We have on-demand funding right now. So even though the main campaign is over, you can go on, you can buy select items, including tickets to that SoCal screening. You can also get the Mega Bundle and other great things, including pre-ordering your Blu-ray DVD combo set of Making Apes. So please head over to Indiegogo and continue to support us as we get this project completed. Thanks again for your support.
Yep, thank you.
The more I hear about it and the more you learn about it when you go online and you see their trailers and everything that they've posted, the more excited I get about it, because the makeup in the Planet of the Apes movies is just incredible. Even now, in 2018, watching Planet of the Apes on the big screen, the makeup just, it works. It still works. And I've seen the War of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and I've seen how great that can be. But I don't feel like this makeup feels dated because of the way the actors portray the characters and everything, and just the great job the makeup people did. And so I just... Can't they just send us a copy of the rough so we can watch that? I want to see it.
You know what? I don't want to see it on my computer before I see it on the big screen. Since we don't have a Star Wars film this December, let's have a Planet of the Apes film.
Now, before we get into our 50th anniversary breakdown, we just wanted to congratulate Apes TV composer Lalo Schifrin for his latest accomplishment. And I got to be honest with you, I did not know about this until you wrote it in the show notes for, kind of a breakdown of what we're going to go through. So this is really exciting for me as well to hear this. So
well, thank goodness for Twitter. If it weren't for Twitter, I wouldn't know about most things that were going on in the world.
I need to get on social media more.
Yeah, please do. Now, Variety had just tweeted out that the Board of Governors of the Academy of Motion Pictures, Arts and Sciences has voted to present honorary awards to publicist Marvin Levy, composer Lalo Schifrin, and actress Cicely Tyson, and the Irving G. Thalberg Memorial Award will go to producers Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall. Woot woot, Kathleen Kennedy, about time. And I hope Lalo Schifrin, in his speech, is going to start and end with composing the themes to the Planet of the Apes TV live-action show.
Right. Well, something I think that one of the reasons his scores for the live-action TV show are so great is because, he's also done some really great scores for movies. He's very cinematic. And if you go back and re-listen to the soundtrack for the TV show, and I believe they're still selling it over at La La Land Records if you don't have a copy, at least the stuff that he did, it just doesn't feel like a TV score. It really feels a step above.
And hence, he's getting this award. Good for him. All right, now the honors will be presented at the Academy's 10th Annual Governor's Awards on November the 18th at the Ray Dolby Ballroom at Hollywood and Highland Center. Well, that's just down the street from you, Mark.
Now let's talk 50th anniversary.
Now let's talk about something else.
Now, here in LA, USC held screenings and they had exhibits with props, costumes, and vintage merchandise. Many of the screenings including panels featuring cast and crew of Ape films past and present. So without further ado, drum roll please, as we begin with our long-promised coverage of the 50th anniversary of Planet of the Apes!
Now, like you were saying, this was held at USC for their Visions and Voices series that kicked off the 50th anniversary celebration of Planet of the Apes last February with a screening of the original 1968 film. And a huge round of applause has got to go out to Alessandro Ago, who served as the director of programming for these events and who also moderated the panels. He did a bang-up job, and big, huge round of applause.
Should we give a huge round of boos to the guy who yelled at me as I was trying to take my picture in front of the poster that was being projected on the stage?
Oh, yeah. As we waited outside for an hour or two, and then when we finally got inside, Mark, you went up on stage, and you're taking pictures and doing somersault and cartwheels, and that's when the booming voice overhead said, "Hey, get off the stage."
And that's a true story. Well, except for the cartwheels and stuff. I was just trying to get my picture taken, but I did get yelled at.
Right. So, let's take it back a couple of steps and go through this really exciting night, because I wasn't sure what to expect since I've been to other Ape screenings and you get a small handful of people. So, I thought, you get maybe 20 or 30 Ape fans there. And I recall getting there and seeing this huge line, a couple of blocks long, full of Ape fans. And who's at the very front of the line entertaining the troops? Well, Mr. Bobby Porter.
Thank God.
He was schmoozing, he was doing his thing, and you would have thought he was like a politician over there handing out buttons and kissing babies. Well, we were handing out buttons. In fact, we got a lot of new Ape listeners just by standing in line and people coming over to us and not knowing about Talking Apes. And Mark, you met a couple of people on the subway there, and you gave some buttons too, which I had met just a couple of weeks ago. So those buttons have been going a long way.
Right. It was kind of a shock because I remember I was wearing my Talking Apes t-shirt and people would ask me what that was. And I was handing out buttons, but I didn't think it would go anywhere. And then, what was it, last week? You came up to me and said, you met some woman that has been listening to the show, and it's because I handed her a button on the train.
Yeah, that was at the Visionaries panel with Dana Gould. This woman came up to me, I wish I had gotten her name, and said, "Yeah, I just talked to your co-host on the ride to the first screening and gave me a button, and I've been listening ever since. So thank you, listener."
That is so cool. And I remember when I arrived, because I arrived after you, I was real concerned that I wasn't going to get in. And that's why I said, thank God Bobby Porter was at the front of the line, because we schmoozed him in a little bit and he kind of, let us stand there with him, and that allowed us to get some good seats.
Not that we condone cutting in line, but
no, we don't. He was holding our spot.
Yes, let's go with that.
But it was really great because he was really, communicating with the crowd. And Bobby Porter is just like the most amazing person for this. Nobody knows how to treat their fans better than Bobby Porter. I mean, he puts them first. He tells them all sorts of stories. And it was just like an amazing thing to watch, because all these people thought they were just going to be standing in line, bored out of their mind while they waited for the movie. But no, they kind of got a mini panel with Bobby Porter at the front end. And he's so great at that.
And then finally the doors open and we race to the front, right? The front of the front row at the front of the theater. And this is perfect. This is great. And that's when you decided to go up on stage and take some pictures and all of a sudden get off the stage.
I'm just glad the front row was where it was because it was still a good 50 feet from the screen because I've learned that at these things you like to sit in the front row. And when we went to the 2001 Planet of the Apes screening, that was very uncomfortable sitting 3 feet from the screen.
Well,
up.
Right. But because I wanted to record these panels for the apes out there who didn't get a chance to go, I wanted to get right in front. And ever sit behind someone while trying to record a panel or a show, their head always moves right in front of the lens, always.
Well, I will tell you this, at the screening we're talking about now with the original Planet of the Apes, I had a guy who was sitting next to me who was snoring through the movie, sleeping, and then the panel starts talking, and you can just tell he just didn't want to be there or something. Either that or he had a late night the night before, because I don't even know why he came. He just kind of slept through the whole thing.
You know, I've been victim to that, too, and I've been to panels where I've fallen asleep in the front row, and I've woken up only to see Phil Tippett and Dennis Murin and Stuart Freeborn looking right at me like, really, kid? Really? Right. And that's been very embarrassing. So, and my heart goes out to him. But still, calm down the snoring. Do something about that.
So how cool was it to see Planet of the Apes, the original movie, on the big screen with this really amazing print? Because I've seen it on the big screen before, but the print's generally been all scratched up and everything. This looked like a new print. It was so perfectly projected. I mean, like the image was so clean and crisp that I don't think I'd ever seen it that way except for maybe on Blu-ray. But this was on the big screen, so it's even more impressive.
Oh, yeah. It was a cleaned up print for this screening. And yeah, like you said, it really showed because the colors were crisp. The darks had a nice contrast to them. There was no scratches or dropout. Perfect print of this, and I have never seen Planet of the Apes up on the big screen, so I'm glad my first time was mint.
Can't help thinking that somewhere in the universe there has to be something better than man. Has to be.
The words are Charlton Heston's.
Get out a last signal to Earth that we've landed!
The world he finds out in the galaxy will challenge every idea you've ever had of civilization. A planet where man is the lowest order of living things, and the superior beings are apes. They build the cities, make the laws, the gods, and control the guns that hunt a race of lowly, terrified humans who run wild in the jungles, are caged in the prisons, and stuffed in the museums. 20th Century Fox transforms the motion picture screen into Planet of the Apes.
And it really looked like if they were shooting on film today, this would be the new print that they're showing on opening weekend. I mean, it was really clean. I was really, really impressed. And this was probably the biggest screen I've ever seen it on. I've seen it at, movie theaters for midnight screenings and stuff like that. And then seeing it with this crowd, because this was a sold out crowd. It was at a point where I was so sure that they were going to be turning people away, but instead they brought in like chairs and stuff to fit these people in. And this was a big auditorium. Some of the other screenings were in smaller auditoriums and they were like half full, but this one was in a big auditorium and it was packed and they were reacting. When he says, "Get your hands off me," that line, the audience was just like, yeah, and it was amazing.
Do you know where else I got a couple of stares personally? Look, it's a man. I looked over, I saw Max Cervantes looking at me, and a couple of other people who I didn't know were looking over in our direction. So there were a lot of Talking Apes fans in that crowd. For me, that was the highlight right there.
It was a lot of fun, and I'm glad I went to this, because I don't know when I'm going to get another chance to see it on the big screen again, and especially with really good sound, really good print. It just was amazing. And it also made me realize how great the production design was. The makeup, as I discussed earlier, didn't feel dated. The cinematography just was amazing. I mean, this was a movie that could have been your typical B sci-fi film. And as you're watching it on the big screen, you're realizing, no, this is a great, great movie that really deserves its place, you know, to be known as one of the best films of all time. Because I just don't know if I'll be able to watch it on my TV again the same way.
Oh, not after seeing this. Nuh-uh. No. But now, after the film ended, we got treated to an amazing legacy panel that included Matt Reeves, the director of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, who also wrote and directed War for the Planet of the Apes, Dylan Clark, producer of Rise, Dawn, and War for the Planet of the Apes, Dan Strepek, who was the makeup artist for the films and TV series, William Kreber, the art director for Planet of the Apes, Rick Jaffa was there, who wrote and co-produced Rise of the Planet of the Apes. His writing partner, Amanda Silver, was supposed to be there, but she couldn't make it for some reason. And when I say writing partner, also his sweetie wife. Joe Letteri was there, who did the amazing visual effects work on the Rise, Dawn, and War series. Rupert Wyatt was there, director of Rise of the Planet of the Apes. And missing in action was Lynda Harrison. She was scheduled to be there, but had to drop out at the last minute due to something. Not sure what, but something. And I was so disappointed because I had met her like 20 years ago, and she was such an amazing, fun person, sharing stories, just being very comfortable to talk with. We were pen pals for a while. I got to find some of these letters that we were writing back and forth. And I was sad not to see her.
And then there was a surprise guest who we will get into a little bit later.
Now, Mark, what were some of the highlights for this particular legacy panel for you?
Well, some of the highlights for me were kind of personal. They had to do with favorite filmmakers or them talking about things that were basically, to me, the reason why the remakes, or I guess you would call them reboots, were as great as they were. But let me start with when I talk about, favorite filmmakers, because this movie was directed by Franklin J. Schaffner, who is a filmmaker that I really love. I mean, he didn't just do Planet of the Apes. He did Patton with George C. Scott and Papillon with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. And so he's a really great filmmaker. So knowing the history of how filmmakers can be, and also worked with a couple of filmmakers, and knowing that, sometimes they can be really into their ideas and they want to do things their way and this, that, and the other thing. It was really, really great when William Kreber, who was the art director, started talking about how film is a collaborative medium, and Franklin J. Schaffner was one of those directors that really took other people's ideas and appreciated them, and if they were good, used them. And my favorite story that William Kreber told about this kind of collaborative nature of Franklin J. Schaffner had to do with the crashing of the ship into the water.
The making a motion picture, I gotta make this statement, is a collaboration. A collaboration of some hundreds of people that have different jobs and different levels and different inputs. We just, when you think of something that might work or make something work better, it doesn't matter who says it. It can be, anyone on the unit that comes forward, and you hope that everyone is receptive of suggestions, and if they work better than the script, the director will do it. And Franklin Schaffner was one of those people. I had a lot of opportunities to in fact, the beginning of the picture was written where, you see the spaceship actually crash. And I told Frank, I said, I don't want another borderline miniature going into Lake Powell. I said, what if we did a subjective camera and just fly the audience let them ride the spaceship? And he says, that's what we'll do. That's what we'll just do it.
I actually find this very interesting because when you're making a movie like this, you would expect to see the ship crash into the water from the outside. And always wondered why they didn't do that. I mean, that seems like the obvious shot.
It always comes down to budget.
Right, but he said something about, I'm trying to remember, but he said something about, not wanting to do another miniature shot or something like that. But
yeah, which always comes down to the budget.
But
it happened to be a fantastic idea we've never seen before. That the point of view shot of the Icarus slamming down into the ocean.
Yeah, so it's like we were crashing into the ocean too. And obviously, Franklin J. Schaffner, he heard this idea and he didn't sit there and say, oh no, we gotta, see the outside of the ship and all that, blah, blah, blah. He was basically, wow, that's a great idea. Let's use it. Once again, a great director utilizing great ideas to make the best film possible. So I was really happy to find that, Franklin J. Schaffner was a real collaborator. And it was mentioned many times in the panel, and I think it was William Krieger saying over and over again, he was a collaborator. He listened to people. And if the listeners go back and listen to the panel as a whole, they'll hear this. And so I was really glad to hear that because I don't really know much about Franklin J. Schaffner as a director. I just know his work. So that to me, as a film lover and somebody who edits, for a living, it was really great to find out that somebody that I really kind of looked up to their work was a collaborator like that.
When you are creating a whole new world, like the Planet of the Apes, there's no way you can only deal with one vision. And he was very, very smart to get in all the ideas just because they were dealing with a whole new universe. Now, Mark, I know you were also very excited to see Matt Reeves.
Yeah, no, I was really, really happy to see Matt Reeves sitting up there on the panel. He was the director of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War of the Planet of the Apes. And he's just one of my favorite directors working today. Our fans will appreciate this, but when he was asked about his love for Planet of the Apes, he said he was introduced to the whole series from the television show.
I think I was introduced to the whole series from the television show. And I was obsessed with it. Like the way that everybody's into Star Wars now, which I was into Star Wars later, but this was my Star Wars for me before Star Wars. And I had got an 8mm camera when I was literally a wind-up 8mm camera, not even Super 8, when I was 8 years old. And I had this projector, and we got some Super 8 footage, which you could buy then. You couldn't get, so here, imagine a time when you couldn't watch something on your phone, or you couldn't watch a movie, you couldn't stream. It didn't exist. You had to see it. You could see a movie on TV, or you could see it in the theater. Or you could get these little excerpts that were on Super 8. So it's actually in the exhibit, but there was this thing that I had that I watched until all the sprockets broke, which was from Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which I thought was the scariest, coolest movie ever. Like, I don't know if you guys seen it, but when the mutants, it's crazy. When mutants take off their faces and they're praying to the nuclear weapon and they say, I reveal my inmost self into my God, and they look like the scariest thing you've ever seen. I was like, this is really not good. But I was really scared. And so I used to dress as an ape. I mean, I had a mask, and we made. So then, when I was 11, we made a mashup, which was a cross between Planet of the Apes, because I had these ape masks, and Star Wars. The movie was called Galactic Battles, and it was me and my friends, and we were just obsessed with Planet of the Apes. I mean, those movies meant everything to me, and I think your work is incredible. Your work is incredible. It's an honor to be up here with you. I love these movies.
I find it really great because, we're doing a show that is now getting into, the Planet of the Apes world as a whole, but we started out with 35 episodes about the television series. And to find out that the director who's pretty much in charge of the Planet of the Apes series right now started with the TV series and was obsessed with it, that was really exciting for me. I also really love the fact that him saying he was obsessed with it, and that this was his Star Wars before Star Wars, that meant that this franchise was in good hands because it was in the hands of somebody who was passionate about the franchise. And if you have that kind of passion for a franchise, you're going to make a good movie about it. You're going to make a good movie in that universe. You're going to make sure that what you hand us is respectful to that franchise because you respect it so much. And I think a lot of the sound bites and a lot of the things that were said that I really connected with were all about the respect that the new franchise filmmakers have towards the original films.
I don't think Matt knew the Pandora's box he had opened when he mentioned that, because afterwards, after the panel was over, you and I charged up to him and like, okay, continue, expand. What else you got? And then you asked him the big question, Mark.
I don't remember. What did I ask him? Did I ask him about Urko's helmet?
No, that's my big
Pete's
question.
backstory.
Pete's backstory.
I remember that now. It was weird because the main thing that I wanted to know from him was when the Future Apes movies come out, and he didn't want to talk about Future Apes movies. Maybe the contracts aren't signed and it's not all finalized or anything yet. He just kept saying, I don't want to talk about that right now. I'm concentrating on the Batman movie I'm making. But I then finally said, okay, well, if and when, because we know it's when, the Future Apes movies come out, the other movies show such love for the original films. We got, references to Bright Eyes, and the whole thing's leading up to the original Planet of the Apes. There's this real homage to the original Planet of the Apes movies. Since he was such a big fan of the Planet of the Apes TV show, maybe he could pay some homage to the TV series, and that's when we started talking about Pete having no backstory and the Urko helmet thing. We started throwing ideas out at him.
I've talked to people over there at Boom Studios about maybe doing a graphic novel starring Pete because of his lack of backstory. So we may get something in the future. I'm not promising anything, but it's out there. It's out there.
But he wasn't the only one who was passionate about it, because somebody who wasn't in on the conversation with us was Dylan Clark, the producer of the War of the Planet of the Apes and Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. He injected himself into the conversation and started, really showing his passion for the TV series as well. And from what Matt Reeves told me, Dylan Clark is a bigger Planet of the Apes TV series fan than he was, Matt Reeves was. And so it was just so great to find out that these two people who are making these great Planet of the Apes movies are fans of the TV series. And hopefully they'll take what I said and they'll start paying homage to the TV series. And if you start to see that in future movies, just think of Talking Apes TV.
Think of who?
Talking Apes TV.
Think of who?
Talking Apes and Talking Apes TV.
That's so staying in.
And something else that I really reflected back on and that I really thought was incredibly interesting is when Rick Jaffa, the co-writer of Rise, he co-wrote it with his, I don't know if it was his girlfriend or his wife. When he tells the story, he says honey, so I'm assuming that there's...
Amanda Silver? That's his wife.
Amanda Silver, that's his wife? Okay, so... So Rick Jaffa told how he came up with with the idea for Planet of the Apes and how he actually fell into finding the idea. He wasn't actually trying to come up with a Planet of the Apes idea. And the reaction of Amanda Silver when he told her.
The funny thing is that Amanda and I didn't start out to recreate the Planet of the Apes franchise. We just had been collecting articles about people who had been raising chimpanzees in their homes as if they were children, and it always went badly and horribly. Actually, they would attack the owner or a neighbor or something. And I bet we cut out articles for over 3, maybe even 5 years, and we'd find them and just collect them. And we kept thinking there's got to be a movie there somewhere. And then the truth is we were between jobs. And I packed up like a list of ideas and clippings of all these different things and took them up to Ojai for the weekend to try to come up with what would be our next script. And just by fate, I had these clippings of these families that had raised chimpanzees in their homes next to this pile of articles that we had collected about genetic engineering. It was just total chance. And I was sitting on the floor and articles all over the place, and my eyes kept going back and forth between those two stacks of articles, genetic engineering and these people that raise these chimps. And literally a voice in my head said it's Planet of the Apes. And the structure for the first movie came together almost within minutes, to be honest. And so I packed up my stuff, and I was very excited, and I drove back home, and I ran into the office, and I said to Amanda, she said, what have you got? And I said, honey, I've got an idea that's going to change the world. She said, what is it? I said, we're going to reinvent Planet of the Apes. And she looked at me with this frozen smile on her face, like, you poor stupid son of a bitch. Are you kidding me? That's your idea? And I said, no. I just started pitching her what I'd been thinking. And then she said to me, so it's a character piece? And I said, yes. And that afternoon, Caesar was born in our office.
First of all, I love the fact that, when he said it was Planet of the Apes, that she was, kind of, are you kidding me? That's your idea?
Well, yeah.
Because they weren't even thinking Planet of the Apes, and he just kind of falls into it while he's looking at these photos, and he's researching something completely different. So
yeah, I think she was reflecting back to the animated show.
But, who knows, she wasn't there, we couldn't ask her, but I really love the fact that when she reacted that way, she had also asked, so this was going to be a character story. And he says yes. And so this was going to be a character story from the start. And I think that that's why these three films, Rise, War, and Dawn, are so great, is because they're blockbuster movies, but they're really character stories. And that means that, right from the start, when they were discussing the idea, it was a character story, they got it right from the beginning moments of the process. Because let's face it, the original was a character piece, and Rick Jaffa, talked about that on the panel.
Tonight's movie was a character piece. And, Taylor starts off as a cynic, a misanthrope, a total a-hole, and has lost his faith in humanity. And by the end, he's the lone defender of humanity. And he finds in the end, though, that he was right all along. That is really bold, daring stuff to tell. And I don't know that we were that bold, but the one thing that we were all committed to is that all three of the films are character pieces. And they got deeper and deeper as each movie went on. And we all believed that if we were honest and told an honest story about a character, that people would come. People would show up. And they did. And the big battle in the first one was that we were told, as Amanda and I went off to write, that let's be really clear, it'll never be the Apes movie. It's going to be James Franco. It wasn't James Franco at the time. It's going to be Will Rodman's movie. We go, oh yeah, sure. You bet. Absolutely, yes. And so that had a little bit to do with the fact that the first act was his movie. But we slowly subverted that to, being in Caesar's point of view. And never once did I feel any wavering at all on anybody's part. And I think that it does take a team, really dedicated, hard-working people to make this stuff pull off, because you can go wrong so many different ways. And the studio's got a lot of money, right? I get it. They got a lot of money right on it.
And that's great that they didn't just rely on the special effects and the makeup, but they really, really honed in on that story. I think that's why we're still talking about it 50 years later. But another spectacle I want to talk about at this Legacy panel was that surprise guest you had mentioned earlier. Dr. Zaius showed up. I did not expect this. But about, an hour and 45 minutes into the panel, we hear a booming voice at the back of the room, and here comes the real live Dr. Zaius.
I was sitting in the back and I thought, boy, you get one human that can talk, and then there's another and another and another, a whole nest of them. That's one of my lines from the movie. Hello. Lovely to see everyone. Thank you all for coming, and thank you for enjoying the film. Let's have a round of applause for this. What a bank of talent. I live up in Ojai now myself, and I was not going to come down, Alan, because to me, the Forbidden Zone is the 101 on a Friday. What an honor it is to be on this stage with this august group of people And what an honor it is for them to be here with me.
I think Dr. Zaius, you're probably the perfect person to tell us a little bit about working with Chuck Heston.
Well, I have a lovely story about Chuck, but this is neither the time nor the place. No, I got teeth. That's Dan Strepak, one of the best makeup men in the business.
And very lively. I've never seen Dr. Zaius this way.
Well, you know what? He's in Los Angeles. He's got his groove on. He's feeling a little bit more freed up. He's getting used to all these damn dirty humanoids. And he sees a spotlight and he's going to jump right into it. So he sits down and just starts talking with the panel and with the guests and with the audience and brought the house down.
Now, would you say he was talking to them or he just took over?
Yeah, I think the word you're looking for is usurped.
But he was funny. He was great.
He was, especially his one zinger about the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes.
I love all of the new films. I love all of the new films. As a fan of the films, it's so great that they're back and they're great. And because as we all know, after Battle, there was nothing until Rise.
Oh, wow.
Too soon.
Not soon enough.
Although I will tell you this, one of the funniest things I've ever heard regarding a Planet of the Apes movie came that night when Dr. Zaius references what he calls the original ending of the movie.
Did you know that at the end of the film, the original line was, he looked up and said, "Oh my God, they have a Statue of Liberty too."
I thought that was the funniest thing. I think that the whole entire audience laughed for like ever on that. It was just so hysterical. And it was out of nowhere. It was just so great.
And then Zaius was answering some questions from the audience. And I think this one was the one that just raised the roof.
Hello, thank you for all your great work on these films. Okay, so my question, Dr. Zaius, this is a perfect one for you to answer, although everyone else is allowed to give their opinion. What do you think is the primary value that ape society cherishes, and how does that differ from humanity?
Well, I think what the film shows, clearly this one, is it's not good to have a powerful orange politician. She says Cornelius has developed the most amazing theory that the ape evolved from a lower order of primate, possibly man. And my original line was fake news.
All right, so Mark, that was the highlights from that legacy panel and the original Planet of the Apes screening from that night. And once again, if you want to see the whole panel in its entirety, go over to the Skywalking Through Neverland YouTube channel and you'll see the whole thing. And please, do yourself a service and learn all about what happened on the set from the people who were actually there. Now, that happened on the 9th of February. Now, let's jump forward to the 20th of February when there was a Beneath the Planet of the Apes and Escape from the Planet of the Apes screening. Now, like you were saying earlier, this was in a smaller theater, but still pretty well packed. And there wasn't a panel at this one. However, Ape Mania, the cosplay group, they were there, and they were a lot of fun to talk with.
Now, I wasn't able to make this one, but I've seen some of the footage that you've posted up on the internet. It's a lot of fun. Everybody should check it out. But why don't you give us your firsthand experience of that night? Because you followed those cosplayers around everywhere.
Well, that's his name is General Ursus.
This is General Ursus right there. What is he doing?
What is that?
Madam Zero, we have a question. Do you know how Ursus is able to keep his helmet on? We have been trying to figure that out for ages.
He has a very big head, if you know what I mean.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yes.
It's permanent.
It is permanent.
Yeah, he sleeps with it.
We thought maybe it might be Velcro.
Well, I don't know what that is, but he does sleep with the helmet on.
How do you know
So now we finally have the answer straight from the simian's mouth.
Yes.
Oh, that was only one of the few humans that I kissed right there.
How was it? How was the kiss?
Well, he was so damned ugly, but it was. Don't tell Cornelius. This is all
No,
the record.
not at all. Not at all.
It was quite lovely, I must say.
Was he a better kisser than Taylor?
Taylor was my first human. It never compares to your first human.
All right, now that no one's listening, who's better, Taylor or Cornelius? Kissing-wise.
Well, Cornelius, of course.
Okay.
Can I ask you a rather personal question, I think? Dr. Zeta, are they asking you personal questions?
They are, but you know.
I caution you.
Milo.
Your answer.
Yes, Dr. Zaius.
It's humans.
I'm so glad you could come. Come on, do your trick. Do your trick. Speak. Please do your trick. Come on. Speak.
Banana! Banana!
Oh, I love bananas.
Now, what is this over here? It's like an ape face. Is this?
It's like somebody took my face and made a mold of it.
It's a mask. Children use it to play.
Oh, so when
gorillas like to dress up as chimpanzees and vice versa.
Okay, that
Well,
makes sense.
I don't want to dress up as a gorilla.
It's for a certain holiday festival.
Gotcha.
Like a Halloween.
Yes. Oh, why is this ape in chains? This is not right. Why is this ape in chains?
We will find the answer to that next week.
Oh, next
Yeah, you're
week.
going to be here next week to see this documentary called Conquer of the Planet of the Apes.
Ah, I see. Yes, I hear it's very
I've only seen
interesting.
humans in chains.
Yes, well, that's what humans belong in chains, not you.
I don't want to say that all chimpanzees look the same, but is this Cornelius, Caesar, or Galen?
That's Cornelius.
That's Cornelius. That is my associate Cornelius, the young ape with a shovel. He's an archaeologist, a young scientist.
All right, just out of curiosity, how can you tell which one is which?
How can you tell which human is human? You all look the same to us.
That's a very good point.
Yes.
That's the smell. The smell. We can tell each
Your
other.
secret, 50 years later, you look like you haven't aged a day.
You know, us simians have very good skin and hair. don't
It's
we?
a mixture of fruits and vegetables and oils, and she calls it Botox. I don't understand it myself, no.
They never broke character to talk to you as themselves or talk to anybody as themselves. They stayed right in that character, and I love when cosplayers do that.
Yeah, and it's very hard too because you want to stay right in your lane. Meaning, if you are the Zira from Planet of the Apes, you don't know what happened in Beneath the Planet of the Apes. You don't know what happened in the TV series. So when I asked them questions regarding that, they were like, "What? What are you talking about?" But very much in character. It's like, you're staying right in the continuity. I love that. And the improv skills needed for this is incredible. And I'm sure they've gone through the same situation, so they have some stock answers. But even if they did, they answered them with such spontaneity that I really believed I was talking to Zira and Zaius. And then later on, Cornelius showed up, and he was fantastic too. Ursus was there, ape soldiers, and if you had told a 6-year-old Richard Woloski that I'd be talking to these apes, my head would have just imploded, exploded, imploded, and then just exploded once again.
Well, let me tell you how smart these cosplayers were too, because as you just mentioned, when you talked to them about the TV series, they acted as if they didn't know what you were talking about. When I first watched that, I was kind of like, I don't think that cosplayer is aware of the TV series. And then you mentioned to me, oh, no, it's just those characters wouldn't know anything about the TV series because Zira's not in the TV series. She never encountered Pete and Alan. And then I went back and rewatched it after we had that talk. And I'm like, oh, I get it now. Smart. That cosplayer is smarter than me because if I'd been in that costume, I would have never thought to do that.
And someone else on the YouTube channel had made the same comment, that she doesn't know what she's talking about, and has she never seen this, the TV series, or that? It's like, no, she knows exactly what she's doing. And it's odd that this Zaius almost sounded a little different than the Zaius we had seen the week prior. Almost as if it was two different Zaiuses, but that couldn't happen. Oh, I get it. Okay, it's the whole free freeway lane universe thing. Okay, I gotcha. And it maybe in each lane that they sound a little bit different.
I think Zaius is just in all universes.
Yeah, and then I had approached Zaius and asked him to record this for us.
Hello, I'm Dr. Zaius from the Planet of the Apes, of course. My favorite podcast to listen to is Talking Apes, even though it's hosted by filthy humans.
He was wondering why I was talking about talking apes, because all apes can talk. He was very, very baffled in what a podcast is. So I gave him a button, and hopefully Zaius is now a Talking Apes listener.
It's like, how great to have Zaius introduce our show every week.
I know. Now, if you can just get Urko to calm down a little bit. Oh, no, you know what? It'd be funny if Urko was all in his Urko-ness and recording a Talking Apes promo for us.
You know, when Zaius showed up at the original Planet of the Apes movie panel, it was a little different than the Zaius that we're used to seeing. He was lighthearted. He was having a good time. He's loosened up. Maybe if Urko were to show up at one of these panels, we could get him to loosen up a little bit.
See, Urko has only made it to San Francisco. He hasn't made it to Los Angeles yet. So once he goes a little bit further south, he'll loosen up. He'll be wearing a tank top, putting some sunscreen on, maybe taking off the helmet, wearing some Bermuda shorts.
He'll go out surf a little bit, but he's got to keep the helmet on when he's surfing.
You know what? If Batman and Robin can surf, and so can Urko.
Just give him some shark repellent.
There you go. Then he'll jump that shark. Oh, all the best franchises into one. But then there was the screening of Beneath the Planet of the Apes and Escape from Planet of the Apes, two more ape films I had never seen on the big screen.
The year, 3955. Charlton Heston as Taylor, a 20th century astronaut, space-wrecked in the incredible future. Lynda Harrison as Nova, a savage beauty from the enslaved and voiceless human race. James Franciscus as astronaut Brent on a reckless mission to rescue Taylor, trapped by the swaggering, brutal master race of apes who dominate the Earth, a planet shattered by the atomic war of a distant, forgotten past. Face the terrifying dangers of the Forbidden Zone with them, engulfing you in the shattering experiences that await beneath the Planet of the Apes.
Well, there's an intelligence working in this place. They know we're here.
We are determined to know what the apes want, war or peace.
The super-intelligent mutants, are they human or something else? In their church, an unspeakable god.
A doomsday bomb.
Behind their faces, an unbearable secret.
We don't kill our enemies. We get our enemies to kill each other.
The irresistible war machine of the guerrilla army versus the devastating secret mind weapons of the subterranean mutants in civilization's final battle to answer the ultimate question. Can a planet long endure, half human and half ape? Is it the beginning or the end?
This is Dr. Zira, her loving husband Cornelius, and little Milo. The most dangerous to man is little Milo. Why? The time is 1973. The place is right here on Earth. How did they get here? What is their reception?
Welcome, gentlemen, to the United States.
Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Their adventures are completely fresh, completely new, astonishingly different from what you experienced in Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes. At first, feared and imprisoned.
All right, we'll go for the banana.
Well, why doesn't she take it? Because I loathe bananas. I don't believe it.
The president convenes a special board of inquiry.
Have you a name?
Zira.
Does the other one talk?
Only when she lets me.
The president's chief advisor wants them murdered, or else the human race cannot survive. The escape. The birth of an infant who could threaten man's very existence. The relentless chase. Why was Washington thrown into a turmoil by this one baby?
Stop him!
Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
You know what? I'll go ahead and say it. I've never seen any of the Planet of the Apes films up on the big screen. So I was so excited. And maybe at this point, I should only watch these films on a small screen, maybe like a computer screen, because some of these shots should not be up on a big screen anymore. Why put an extra, clearly with a Don-posed mask, in the same shot as Roddy McDowall? Why have this guy in the background looking like he's wearing a mask?
So I didn't get to see him on the big screen. I was going to ask you, I knew about the budget, restrictions and all that, and how they didn't really do the makeup job 100% on some of the characters, because you can see it on the DVD. I wanted to know, now that we've talked about how great the makeup is on the original Planet of the Apes and how great it still looks on the big screen, I wanted to ask you how that kind of so-so makeup they were doing with their budget and just throwing it together looked up on the big screen, and you just answered that question.
It looked horrible, especially after seeing Ape Mania out in the lobby, and their makeup was perfect, and now seeing this, it was disheartening. And I can't believe that Fox executives would watch this film before it was released and go, yeah, it's good, put it out there. Well, they don't. They're going on the Apes name. They don't care about those group shots where clearly every single ape in that shot are all wearing Don-posed masks. I'm surprised they didn't put a couple of those Ben Cooper costumes with a rubber band that holds the mask on your face. But then we go to Escape from the Planet of the Apes, and you figure, okay, we have 3 apes, not much to deal with. The budget has been slashed considerably because you're just dealing with Cornelius, Zira, and Milo. Well, then you get that big gorilla who strangles Milo, which didn't look any more realistic than those apes in those creature feature films of the 1950s.
Because it's so weird. The first Planet of the Apes, the makeup is so incredible. And then as we go from movie to movie, we still have Roddy McDowall's makeup that looks good, and some of the main characters, their makeup all looks great. But then there are the characters that it just looks like it's just slapped on. And
well, because sequels never work, they figure, hey, we're not going to take a chance in putting so much money into a film and sequels don't work, which is what happened with Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And luckily for them, it did make some money. But, what's the chances of that happening a third time? Which is why they scaled it down to 3 apes. Now, Kim Hunter, she had a very, very bad allergic reaction to this makeup. So they scaled her makeup way back. And on TV, which is how we've been seeing these films for decades, you can't really see the seam lines on her makeup. But now, going to the big screen, you can really see the ape appliances seams around her brow, around the muzzle of the appliance, and you can really see how the skin tone changed. And of course, once you see it once, you can't unsee it, and that's all you see for the rest of the film. Now, one of the biggest kicks I got out of seeing Escape from Planet of the Apes was the fact that it was shot in Long Beach.
Did you see your house?
Of course I saw my house. There was even a shot of me waving from my house.
You must have been a little tiny baby.
Yes, I was. But still, I was waving, and even though I was living in Newton, Massachusetts, I'm sure if I was home in Long Beach, I'd have been waving, and I would be in the movie. But yeah, this was all shot in Long Beach, right down at the harbor. So now, at some point, we got to get Max Cervantes and go out on a big location scout of all the Planet of the Apes films.
That would be a lot of fun. Haven't we talked about that already?
We've been talking about that for years.
So when's it going to happen?
I don't know. Right after we do the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes review episode. Now, a week later, on February 28th, was the Conquest and Battle for the Planet of the Apes screening. And I was so looking forward to this, because these are some of my favorite ape movies.
America, in the year 1991. Apes are sold at auction to become household pets and to work as slaves. They wait for a leader, an ape with the intelligence to lead them into overthrowing man.
Where there is fire, there is smoke. And in that smoke, from this day forward, my people will plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall. And that day is upon you now!
Watch the screen explode as man faces ape in the ultimate revolution, a revolt of the apes.
This will be the end of human civilization!
Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, rated PG.
We want guns!
Now, the final chapter in the incredible Ape Saga. The battlefield, a dead city 12 years after the ultimate bomb has been dropped. The prize, the right to inherit what's left of the Earth. The contestants, ape against man. The most unbelievable showdown ever filmed. As the mutants, strange, transformed men who live underground like moles, battle the apes to decide who will be master and who will be slave.
In the aftermath of his victory, the surface of the world was ravaged by the vilest war in human history.
Climaxing the epic series which made motion picture history comes the last, the most spectacular of all the ape adventures.
Now, fight like apes!
Out of the Forbidden City they roared, to settle once and for all who had the right to rule the planet, ape or man.
And Bobby Porter joined me for the Battle for the Planet of the Apes screening. Once again, if you had told a 6-year-old Rich that you'd be watching this movie with little Cornelius, wouldn't know how to take that. So it was really fun seeing this and looking over to him during his spoiler alert death scene. It was one of those very surreal moments seeing this movie with one of the actors sitting right next to me. And Roddy Mcdowall has never been so perfect. He's really, at this point, grasped onto this character, whether it be Cornelius, whether it be Caesar, and his speech at the end of Conquest, I could watch that 1,000,000 times.
By tomorrow it will be too late. What a tiny, mindless insect like the Emperor Moth can communicate with another over a distance of 80 miles.
An Emperor Ape might do slightly better?
Slightly. What you have seen here today, apes on the 5 continents will be imitating tomorrow.
With knives against guns, with kerosene cans against flamethrowers.
Where there is fire, there is smoke. And in that smoke, from this day forward, my people will crouch and conspire and plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall, the day when he finally and self-destructively turns his weapons against his own kind, the day of the writing in the sky, when your cities lie buried under radioactive rubble, when the sea is a dead sea and the land is a wasteland, out of which I will lead my people from their captivity, and we shall build our own cities in which there will be no place for humans except to serve our ends, and we shall found our own armies, our own religion, our own dynasty, and that day is upon you now!
Well, this was really a good showpiece for Roddy McDowall because his character is front and center. He's got a great kind of character arc. He gets to really play with all his emotions. And Roddy McDowall, he has to do it through this makeup, and he really shines in Conquest.
Right, and even Battle. He gets that scene where his son was just killed by another ape. The emotions that are going through his eyes, and then through the makeup, it's unbelievable what he has done. And I think that's why he maybe wanted to do the Planet of the Apes TV series, because he felt so connected with this character. Now, after these 2 screenings of Conquest of the Planet of the Apes and Battle for the Planet of the Apes, there was another panel with actors and makeup artists. And I got to sit next to Don Murray during these screenings, and he played Breck for the Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and it was really fun to watch him on the big screen, and then look at him through the side of my eye, and I could see him with, you know how when you're looking at something and you're really thinking very hard on it, and your hand is rubbing against your chin? So I'm sure he's thinking, if I could do this again, I'd be making some alternate decisions. But I thought he was perfect in this role. But like I've been saying, it was very, very surreal to watch the movie and be sitting next to the actor. Now, on this panel was Dawn Murray, who, like I just mentioned, was Breck in Conquest. France Nguyen, and I'm sure I'm pronouncing that wrong, she played Alma, one of the mutants in Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Bobby Porter, our good friend, Cornelius in Battle. Austin Stoker, who I was stoked to see, who plays Bruce McDonald in Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Tom Berman, the assistant makeup artist on Planet of the Apes and supervising makeup artist on Beneath the Planet of the Apes and Escape from Planet of the Apes. He was there. So this was a good panel that ranged from actors to makeup artists.
Now, there were two things that stood out to me about that panel. And once again, thank you for recording it, because I didn't make these screenings either. I should have been there. I feel so bad I wasn't there, because hearing you talk about it makes me want to go back in time so I can go see these. But I watched your recordings of them, and there were two things that stood out to me on this panel. One, Austin Stoker has the greatest voice ever.
What kind of people would carve apes' faces on a mountain?
And you'll hear this in a couple of minutes when we talk about Austin Stoker specifically. But before that, there was the second thing that I found very interesting. And it actually wasn't a story about Conquest or Battle. I think it was probably a story about the original Planet of the Apes. But Tom Berman told this awesome story about John Chambers.
We were probably in maybe 3 weeks from January 2nd. And John had created, from the cast we took, he had created the sculptures on their faces, on their plaster faces, and he had painted them and had hair on them. They were mock-ups to show Arthur Jacobs and Mort Abrams, the social producer, to have them come and take a look. And I asked John if I couldn't sculpt a gorilla. And he said, yeah, Tommy, but you do it in the back room. Not anybody's going to see it. Just do that for your own edification. So I was real tickled, and I did it only during my lunch hour. And I sculpted this gorilla, and it wasn't very good. And I hear a knock on the door. I open the door, and it's Arthur Jacobs and Mort Abrams, but John's not there. And so I panic, because I know he wanted to know when they were coming in prior to taking a look at his mock-ups. And so I run up to the makeup department. I said, John, I find him when he's eating lunch. I said, John, Mort Abrams and Arthur Jacobs are there, and they're looking at the mock-ups. He said, oh, God, Tommy, they're not supposed to be there. You let them in. I said, I couldn't help it. He follows me back down to the lab, and he's really nervous, and they're looking at it. They're looking at his mock-ups. They're going, nice. And Arthur Jacobs said, John, I'm going to ask a leading actress to play this role of Zaius. And I don't know if she's going to want to wear this face. It's a little, I don't know. He said, I just don't have the answer. I don't have the answer. And so Mort Abrams is walking around, and he's trying to figure out an answer, and he's looking at the ceiling and everywhere, and he wanders into the back room. And pretty soon I hear him say, Arthur, come in and take a look at this. And I see John look at me and what? And so they go in and they look at the sculpture I did. And as I said, it wasn't very good. And it was someplace between ape and human, because I was just trying to work out all the particulars. And Mort says, there's something about this that's evolutionary. It's a little more human. It's not quite so ape, and with that big flat wide nose of a chimpanzee you put on the other face. I don't know if he's going to figure an actress will ever wear this. And John's going, oh yeah, okay, yeah. Well, you come back next week and we'll take a look. We'll fix it. We'll see what we can do. We'll try to make some changes. Yeah, okay, yeah. But they keep talking about it. Now, me as young apprentice, I'm very proud that they're looking at what I'm doing, and I realize I'm up shit's creek without a paddle.
Oh yeah.
I'm going to be punished tremendously because this big Irishman is. And so they said, okay, we'll be back next week. And so they leave. And John looks at me and he goes, huh? Huh? He goes to the back room, he comes back and he picks my sculpture up and he smashes it on the floor. And he said, you know what you are? He said, you're a lunch bucket. This is his favorite thing to do. A lunch bucket, you're going to have a lunch bucket glued to your hand your whole life. It's you and your big greasy thumb. He said, get out of here. And he threw me out of the lab. And so it was just he and I working there. So I was up in the makeup department, and I was doing my apprenticeship duties, filling bottles and powder puffs and taking chairs to the makeup artists, all the things apprentices do. And he kept coming down there all week long and kept checking on me to see what I was doing because he was seething. He wasn't through with me yet. He wanted to get me bad. And so then they had a place outside called the Tent, this old blue building. I had set up out there, and I was taking an early lunch because I came in early, and I see John peeking around the corner. He said, what are you doing? I said, I'm eating lunch. He said, lunch hour is not now, it's an hour from now. I said, Ben and I told me to take it now because I came in early. And I had drawn a picture of myself hanging on the wall, crucified. And at the bottom I put, I can laugh when things aren't funny. And John looks over at that thing, and he starts to laugh. And he's a big, heavy guy. He's buckled over. The tears are pouring down his face. He's holding his stomach. He just had this huge release. And after he gets through and wipes the tears from his eyes, he said, get back in the lab.
So I thought that was just a really funny story. I don't really got anything to say about it. I just thought that the apes out there would enjoy listening to that.
Well, who wouldn't? But now, when they were asking for questions from the audience, of course, my hand shot right up. And of course, I had a question for Austin Stoker.
Here comes the voice.
Yes.
This question's for Mr. Stoker. What did you think when you were approached to do Return to the Planet of the Apes animated series?
I could not believe that. Return to the Planet of the Apes. But that was for television, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, that was for TV. And I remember talking to, I forgot who I was talking to about that. And I said, how am I going to approach this? It's a television thing, and it's the Planet of the Apes. And the person said to me, just imagine, try to imagine in your mind you're on stage. You're doing a movie. It's the same as doing a movie. I said, no, but why would they want me to do it this way? I forget what the person was. But his suggestion was, don't even try. Just do it. Just let it come out of your mouth. That's what I did. Did it work? I don't know. I never saw it. The end of it, I never saw it.
It's very good.
I've never seen it.
He never saw it. He never saw Return to the Planet of the Apes. However, he was a working actor back then, and I'm sure he recorded all of these episodes in like an afternoon, and he forgotten all about it. Seeing how it didn't last any more than 14 episodes, I'm sure it never even dawned on him to watch it.
But we met him a while back at a signing over at Dark Delicacies here in North Hollywood, and we told him he needed to watch it. We reminded him of the show. What's next? If we ever get to interview him, we got to bring copies so he can now watch the show.
Oh, we should mail him a copy before we talk with him, and just so he can watch it before we interview him, because I did say, hey, we'd love to have you on our podcast. He's like, yeah, and give me his phone number.
But see, what'll end up happening is he'll see that Terror on Ice Mountain episode and be like, I don't want to talk about this.
He's like, wow, this is like the best I've ever done.
Look, it's King Kong and Planet of the Apes.
So there's another show the apes can look forward to, the conversation with Austin Stoker.
I can't wait for that. Let's do it now. I want to do everything now. I want to watch Making Apes now. I want to talk to Austin Stoker now.
Well, you know what? There's so much Planet of the Apes coming our way that let's enjoy it. It's been how many years since we had this much apeness? Let's just enjoy it.
Well, one of the things that will be coming our way is we're going to be doing that review of Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. And the reason I bring that up is because one of these panels was at a screening of the 2001 Planet of the Apes, and Rick Baker was there. But we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to leave that until we do that episode. There's a lot of good stuff there, too. A lot of good stuff.
I wonder if Rick liked the movie, the Tim Burton film. We'll have to wait and find out.
I will tell you this, because of a specific thing, I asked him straight out after the panel, I asked him, did you like this movie? And he gave me an answer, but you'll have to wait until we discuss that panel for me to tell you, although I'm sure everybody can probably guess.
I've been waiting so long to talk to Rick Baker, and that was one of my favorites. Now, jumping ahead to April 11th, there was a screening of Rise of the Planet of the Apes, followed by a panel that was called Fandom and Business of Planet of the Apes. And featured in this panel was Daphne Pleben from Boom Studios, Steve Zierlin, he's the franchise manager at Fox Film, Sean Belston, who is the Executive Vice President of Media and Library Services at Fox, Gary Durrani, who is the author of Planet of the Apes, the original Topps trading card series, and he was the writer of all the Planet of the Apes Topps cards back in 1974, and Roger Alford from the ForbiddenZone.net. This was an exciting panel because we got to talk about the merchandising of Planet of the Apes. And for me, the Apes merchandising always tied in with nostalgia, which I really, really loved.
Right. And it's a long one, too. They had a lot to say about it. They had a lot of long stories. Hard to find any sound bites to put in, but I really, really recommend everybody to go check out the full panel over at YouTube. The one thing that I did connect with, though, that was talked about at this panel goes back to stuff we were talking about when we were talking about the first panel. And that was when Steve Zierlin, who is the VP of Creative Content at 20th Century Fox, he's in franchise management at 20th Century Fox, he talked about how when they rebooted the films, they were able to kind of go in their own direction while still staying respectful to the older films and the old franchise in order to, I think he says, not stifle the artists as they were writing the new ones.
The Planet of the Apes is really unlike any other brand that exists at this point because you really have two very different, not very different, very unique fan bases and worlds. First, the classic series, and that's an entire world unto itself that I think could, between the 5 films and the animated series and the TV series and the Marvel comics and the books that have been created, and all the different timelines and it deals with time travel, and so it's there's so much to that world in itself. So that's kind of what we consider to be the classic apes, and then these new films really present a new world that is definitely in the same universe, but it's not. They didn't have to make everything line up exactly with the old material. It really was an homage of sorts. Their goal was to eventually get to the original film, but to do it in their own way and to do it through their own style. So I think everyone who takes on an Apes project, has to have respect for the world of apes and the tone, and but I think it would have been very difficult for Rick and Amanda if the studio was like, okay, it has to line up exactly with every little detail, because there wasn't, when you look at the original films, there's a lot of inconsistencies there, and so there's so many rules upon rules that you don't want to stifle the artist in coming up with that. So now we kind of do have these two different universes, and so if you're creating expansion material, you could be creating comics and books and games that are in the classic universe and that they are existing in that world, or you could be creating books and comics that are existing in the world of these new films.
What really connected with me on this dialogue that Steve Zierlin was talking about, or he was saying, was the fact that earlier this year, I got into a lot of conversations with people regarding another film that had just come out, and how I didn't like that film because I thought it was very disrespectful to the franchise that it was part of. And the biggest answer I would continuously get was, oh, it's because it was different and it wasn't what you expected and you just wanted it to be what you expected. And I like to bring up the Planet of the Apes franchise as an example of how that's not what I wanted, because the Planet of the Apes franchise did it right. They did it very differently. They did it very on their own. They went in their own direction, but they stayed true to the themes, and they stayed true to what Planet of the Apes was. And I think that's what he's talking about here. He talks about how the old ones are considered classic apes, and then these new films really present a new world. But that it's definitely in the same universe. And so I think that, there's a way to do it to stay new and fresh, and even kind of create your own timeline, while staying respectful to the old franchise by keeping the same themes and keeping, the characters true to what the original franchise, was doing.
I almost feel like you're alluding to Tim Burton's film.
No, I'm not alluding to Tim Burton's film. I'm talking about a movie.
Then you should be.
Well, it doesn't actually matter what movie I'm talking about, and I'm not going to give you the name of that movie because, well, that'll start a whole new conversation that we probably shouldn't get into. But I think what he's talking about here is that you can revisit a franchise many years later and be fresh and new while still allowing everything, the old and the new, to feel like they fit in that same universe.
Now, one of the panelists that I was really excited to see was Gary Durrani, and he had written those Topps trading cards back in the 70s with Planet of the Apes and then Star Wars. And he had written my childhood. I could pretty much recite all of those Star Wars cards as well as the Planet of the Apes cards. So it was really exciting to hear from him and why Fox wanted to do the Planet of the Apes TV series.
It was a weird thing. I mean, my own history with this. I mean, I started working at Topps creating trading card sets and all kinds of wacky packet or whatever it is that we did in '72. And the original Charlton Heston Planet of the Apes card set, the movie came out in '68. The cards came out in '69. And I was still a kid who was going to the candy store, looking through the comic racks, and then eventually, after you were done with the candy and the comic, you'd sort of look on the counter to see if there were any trading card sets, right? Very, very rare. They were just sort of pop up now and then in the 60s, but there was Planet of the Apes. And that was very, very exciting. What happened after that, though, I now was working at Topps, and the first Apes property that came along in the early 70s was the TV series. And that was very interesting because the only reason the TV series even happened is because CBS had just shown the movies, and the movies were breaking all kinds of records. So they decided to go to a series. And I can remember even at the time saying, gee, why don't we have the further adventures of Caesar? He was such an exciting character toward the end of the movie series, and Caesar's Conquest, that's what I wanted to see. So I kind of felt, and we all sort of felt that the TV series concept wasn't as strong as it could have been, and God, it didn't last very long, but it did well for us. And one of the things that was always interesting about Planet of the Apes is you didn't have to go any further than the apes to have amazing visuals. We're talking about Dr. Zaius, we're talking about, I guess he's really the iconic character in a way. The Statue of Liberty is probably the real icon, but and maybe Caesar, the Roddy Mcdowall, in any incarnation of Caesar, maybe is the strongest character. But Dr. Zaius is kind of the first one that I think of. There was just something about him that really drew your attention to him. So, we did the TV show, and eventually, when the Tim Burton movie came along, we got involved with that. And even though that movie didn't ultimately hit the fans the way everybody hoped it would, it sure as heck provided us with great visuals. Our card set is spectacular.
Now, in his book, Planet of the Apes, the original Topps trading card series, he goes into this story, which I had never heard, about why this 1969 Planet of the Apes Topps trading card series only had 44 cards, as opposed to 66 cards, which most sets do have. And that's because Charlton Heston didn't want a lot to do with this. He thought he was demeaning himself by putting himself on a trading card. I don't understand that, but you know what? He was a very high caliber actor and didn't want himself on something, maybe a piece of cardboard. Even the box these cards came in, a little tiny picture off on the side. And he didn't want to feel like if they went with 66 cards, that he was just a cameo in this film. So he said, yeah, I'll give you my likeness, but you got to cut the card series way down, and I'll only be on 9 trading cards. And the trading cards came out in 1969 as opposed to 1968. So, Mark, did you ever have these trading cards when you were a kid? Either the Planet of the Apes film or TV series?
No, we didn't really collect film trading cards when I was a kid. We collected like baseball cards and stuff, but I didn't get into the film trading cards until I was an adult and doing the comic book conventions.
Now, there's a couple of cards that I really wanted to talk to him about, but I couldn't remember exactly the details, and I'm looking through this book right now. I'm trying to flip to these cards, but there's a couple of shots where you see some guerrilla soldiers eating some bubble gum. Remember the old stick of gum that tasted like cardboard? And they try to do something like pineapple or banana flavored? Aha! Here it is. On page 142 of his book, there's a picture of Urko eating some gum. And the caption reads, "Thrill of the Hunt."
Now, the important question, is his helmet on?
Nope, it is not on.
What?
It's not on. I guess when he was eating this gum, it's a hatless act.
So basically, he can ride horses, be bumping all over the place, his hat stays on, but the chewing motion of the gum...
Yep, can't have the helmet on. Just
can't
way
have the helmet on, because it might knock off in that case.
Way too dangerous. Thrill of the hunt. What is the hunt? Finding a piece that's not stale. All right, Mark, let's move on to the following weekends where they had screenings of Dawn of the Planet of the Apes and War for the Planet of the Apes. Unfortunately, we weren't able to attend those screenings, and there was even some screenings of the live action and animated series, and I can't believe we couldn't attend those either. And I really wanted to see how the audience would react to both of these series.
Yeah, I really tried to rearrange my schedule to go to those animated series, but just wasn't possible. And I really wish I'd seen the animated series on the big screen. You know, the way it was intended, right?
Yeah, maybe it's best that we didn't see those screenings up on the big screen. Some things are just meant for the small screen.
Maybe I would have found a new appreciation for Terror on Ice Mountain.
Oh, all the more reason to go. Now, let's cut ahead to August the 22nd, where there was a panel featuring Dana Gould and Daphne Plebin to promote the new book, Planet of the Apes Visionaries from Boom Studios. And once again, got to give a huge round of applause to Alessandro Ago and Visions and Voices for putting this on. And this was the very, very last of the panels. And this is where I got my book. And if you buy a book, you get one of the prints that was hanging up in the exhibit hall just a few months prior. And Mark, I picked you up one.
Yes, you did. It's an gorilla soldier sitting in a director's chair that says Planet of the Apes on the back on set of the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes, and it is actually hanging on my wall. It is normally the kind of thing, because it's the 2001 Planet of the Apes, that somebody would say, thank you, I love it, and then go stash it somewhere. But after seeing the movie one more time and actually gaining a certain appreciation for parts of it, it is now proudly hanging on my wall in front of my desk.
I saw that picture and I thought, this has got Marco Gushwitz written all over it.
Well, because the gorilla looks about as buff as me, so...
Yep. Now, in attendance at this panel, of course, was Dana Gould, who adapted the Rod Serling screenplay into this graphic novel, as well as Daphne Plebin, who is a senior editor over at Boom Studios. Now, Mark, in the near future, we're going to have Dana Gould on the show, and he's going to talk to us all about Visionaries. But there's one particular soundbite I want to play, and that is from Daphne Plebin, who told a story about how this graphic novel came to be.
This one specifically was a passion project of my assistant and then associate editor on the book, Alex Gaylor. He's actually over at DC now doing kind of similar collections and stuff like that. And he was sort of a true blue. He's the one that inducted me to the Church of Apes. And he put it on my desk one day and he said, Daphne, you gotta read this script. It's the original Serling script. I was like, buddy, look at how many scripts I gotta read. This isn't a comic. This isn't something that's due. Give me time. But I took it home that night and I read it, and it was stunning. I brought up the nightclub earlier because I still think it's my favorite scene in the script. The kind of darkly comic, tragic moment of Thomas going on stage and being like, you want to laugh at me? I'll tell you a joke. You know, it was just so unexpected. I always had this sort of perception of the past as less self-aware than the present, and I always forget that the past thinks the same thing about 10 years before that. So I didn't expect something so specific, but universal at the same time. And so I came back the next day and I was like, we gotta adapt this. We gotta do something. And so we actually sat with both scripts and we split them between us, and we broke out. At the time, we weren't doing graphic novels. We were doing 5 to 6 issue limited series, and that's it. And then we'd collect them later. And we sat down and we tried to break this into a 4 to 5 to 6 issue series, pulling from both scripts, seeing what would fit. And we realized we were doing this story a disservice. We were trying to create cliffhangers. We were trying to create action moments per issue. A single issue runs between 20 to 22 pages, comes out monthly. It's $4. You want to make that worth someone's time. But to do that, you functionally create a different story. To your point, there's not that much action. There's 3 acts, but a lot of it is internal. A lot of it is this emotional struggle. It's Thomas coming to grips with his situation. It's him trying to turn that frustration to something productive by teaching Nova. And then it's him coming to an understanding that there's no future for him here. That's not an action scene every 20 pages for 4 or 5 or 6 issues. So it's like, I want to do this, but it's just with what we were publishing at the time, which wasn't graphic novels, it just wasn't going to be as good as it could be, or in a way that it matters to me, which is the story.
So I can't say this enough. Huge round of applause to Alessandro Ago, to USC, to Visions and Voices for putting together such a huge, fun, and exciting and interactive celebration for the 50th anniversary of Planet of the Apes. And if you want to see these panels, go over to our Skywalking to Neverland YouTube channel. You can see everything. Everything that we had shot is right up there, because we know a lot of you listeners, like Dean Preston, who's all the way over there in New Zealand, couldn't make it out for these panels. So, hey, we're there. We got a video camera. Let's record it so you guys can enjoy it as well.
And we will be talking more about this particular panel when we interview Dana Gould, who, even though I wasn't at this panel, I did make it out to Dark Delicacies where he was signing his book, Rod Serling, Planet of the Apes, Visionaries. And he promised me that he was coming on the show, and he was actually looking forward to it. He had one of our pins on his desk. And so we're going to be talking more about this panel when we talk to him on that interview show.
Something just dawned on me. Dana Gould and Dr. Zaius from that first screening, they sound awfully alike.
What are you trying to say?
Nothing. I'm just putting things together in my head. You know what? It's probably nothing. All right.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I thought they sounded completely different.
An analogy my head is putting together is Superman and Clark Kent, but yeah, you know what? It's probably nothing.
So you got Dana Gould with his glasses on because he wears glasses. He takes off his glasses and he's Zaius. Is that what you're saying?
Mark, that's just foolish. How could you ever connect those dots right there? All right, you know what? Before you get any more foolish and silly and crazy and coming up with these absurd analogies, let's move on to our Planet of the Apes Visionaries spoiler-free review. Now, one of the highlights for the 50th anniversary of Planet of the Apes is this new Visionaries graphic novel written by Rod Serling, adapted by Dana Gould, art by Chad Lewis, and released by Boom Studios, and this is now available. Get your copy if you haven't already. This is something I've been waiting for so long. The same concept was done for the first version of the Star Wars script. They made it into a graphic novel. Unbelievable. Because when you read it, it's like you can kind of see the imagery in your head, but now reading it in a graphic novel form is just, it's taking fandom to a whole new level. Because now you really get to see what they were originally thinking. Now, this is a graphic novel I've been waiting so long for, because I know we got the Pierre Boulle novel into a TV series with Return of the Planet of the Apes. That was the closest we've gotten to that novel. But now seeing this graphic novel from Rod Serling's original concepts, it connects a lot of dots.
Right, I was actually really looking forward to this novel as well, because we had heard about the Rod Serling script for so long that you get kind of curious about, what the Rod Serling script might have been and how different it was going to be from the movie that they made. And so this is actually a really, really good book to have and to look at as you're thinking back on the history of Planet of the Apes, to kind of see where it started. And after hearing all the stories of, the behind the scenes, being able to compare where it started with Rod Serling to what it became. So I was really looking forward to this as well. So let me ask you, generally I give my reviews first, but I'm going to ask you to give us your initial response to the book, how you felt about it after you finished reading it.
I loved it. I really, really loved it. It's exactly what I was hoping for. Because I had read the Rod Serling original script a while ago. It's available online. And like I was saying, the closest we've ever gotten to that version is the Return to the Planet of the Apes animated series. And I think we can do one better than that. And that's where this fills in that gap. I love the artist's style. He went off of the inspiration of Ben Nye's makeup screen tests for the original Planet of the Apes. And when I was first looking at this, I didn't know about that. And I'm thinking, wow, this looks a lot like that makeup that Edward G. Robinson wore in the Planet of the Apes screen tests. And then when you go flip to the very back, they'll give some background on the character design. And it's like, that's exactly what they went for. And I love that combination of putting all of the different aspects of the Planet of the Apes into one. You get the makeup, you get the style into this graphic novel. Now, one of the points to really hit on is the style, is the art style. And Dana Gould had said in his panel that they're really trying to capture that Mad Men feel of New York in the 50s. And that really comes across. Because I didn't know if they were going to do a version that was set more in the modern times, which I thought would have been a really fun twist. But, you know what? In the end, I'm glad they sticked with the Rod Serling time, the 1960s. And I'm very glad they went with that. But that's a question I want to ask Dana Gould later on, so I'll keep that one in check.
Is there anything that they might have done differently in the book that you might have preferred to the movie, without getting spoilery?
Right, that's the hard part. I really love the fact that these apes were pure apes. Like when the apes are crossing the streets, they don't just walk across the streets, but they use monkey bars like you'd find in a playground. They're crossing the street using those, go swinging from bar to bar. I thought that was hilarious, and would have liked to have seen more ape behavior in the films.
Right.
How about you? What's your initial reaction to this Visionaries graphic novel?
First of all, I would say that you cannot really compare the book to the movie, because although you can see the similarities, I actually think they're very different. I think that they're very different in tone. The movie is more action-adventure, whereas the graphic novel is more talky. But if you're a fan of Rod Serling, then you know what I mean by talky. It's not talky in a bad way. It's talky in a good way because he knows how to write that. And so it stays interesting. But I felt tone-wise and genre-wise, they felt like they're very different. And so when I think about this book, I don't want to compare it to the movie. That being said, the book feels somewhat truncated to me, making me wonder if the graphic novel was the right avenue for this. Because in graphic novels, they're a very specific medium, and I'm sure that the screenplay was really hard to adapt into a graphic novel because you're limited to how many panels you can show for the action and the dialogue. So it must have been really hard for Dana Gould to, pick and choose what to leave in and what to cut out, especially since it's a Rod Serling thing, and he's a big Rod Serling fan. And this is something that we'll talk to Dana about because I feel like it kind of affected how I felt about the graphic novel, because I feel like cutting down action and dialogue scenes that were probably meant to take up what would have amounted to a couple of minutes of screen time to only a page or sometimes 1 or 2 panels made it feel at times a little incomplete. But to flop it around, on the positive side, it's probably still a very important addition to the franchise. And I'm glad that we got it. It shows us what could have been, and in many ways, it's got some ideas that are what I think better than the film, but wouldn't have worked in the movie that the studios were making. One of them has to do with the ending, which I don't want to get spoilery, but the ending has a completely different tone to it. And I like the way that the book ends a lot. I love the way that the movie ends a lot, but I like the way the book ends better.
Okay, I didn't think you were going to go there.
But the studios were trying to make a movie that wouldn't allow the ending in the book to happen. And we'll get into this probably in further detail with Dana. I just don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't had a chance to read it.
The book has just come out, so let people get the book and then digest it themselves.
Yeah, and it's kind of crazy. So there were a lot of ideas in the book that I liked more than the movie. But I just said that you can't compare the movie to the book, and now I'm going to get into stuff that kind of does that. So maybe it's kind of inevitable that you do that, because when I was reading the book, I felt like we were on Earth the whole entire time. And I don't know if I knew that because I knew the movie or because of the way the book is structured. And I think that the movie had a really smart idea by getting away from modern day society, because as I'm reading the book, it's just too close to modern day society. It's got helicopters. It's got city streets. It's got, everything looks exactly as it would look in a human world. And so to me, that makes me say, hey, we're on Earth. Hey, we're on Earth. Hey, we're on Earth.
Yeah, but they're all apes. I know you do see helicopters, you see a lot of Earth things like parks and statues and movie theaters. But if you were Thomas, and in the book, it's Thomas, not Taylor. If you were Thomas and you had seen all this, would you think that you were on Earth?
I don't know what I would think if I was Thomas. I just know what I would think is if I was watching the movie and everything was exactly as it was on Earth. And I think that's why in the movie, when it shows apes riding horseback, and then we go into old-fashioned huts, and that design that they had created in the art direction, even though that was probably the way humans lived at one point, we're not thinking that because that's not how we live now. And by making it so close to how we lived at the time that the movie would have come out if it had been done this way, because they keep it in the time period that the script was written, then I'm not sure that the ending would have been as strong. And so I really do like what they did in the movie by making everything more primitive. So, but then I think about it and I'm like, but maybe if I had read this book first before seeing the movie, it would have worked on me because I know how Rod Serling writes, and I wouldn't have been thinking that they're on Earth. I would have been thinking he's just making a statement by using this kind of art design.
As social commentary.
So, yeah, so it's really hard for me to judge that. So I try to not let that work against the book, especially since, now here's the thing. I like the book. I think there's a lot of fascinating things in the book. I think that the way that they handle a lot of stuff in the same way as the movie, you can see the parts of the movie in it, but also differently. There's a little bit of Escape from the Planet of the Apes in here. I'm wondering if when they made Escape from the Planet of the Apes, they went back to the script, because after Thomas speaks, they do that whole entire thing where they kind of accept him and he lives in a hotel, and we even have the scene with the tailor, fitting him for clothes and all that. And I'm thinking, this is kind of cool to put into this story. And it also was kind of cool as a Planet of the Apes fan to be like, oh, I wonder if that had anything to do, if they reflected on this when they made Escape from the Planet of the Apes. So there was kind of a lot of that going on.
Only they don't give Thomas any grape juice.
Right. and there's no mention of a banana. But overall, the saving grace for me on this book is the artwork. The artwork is amazing. The artist's name is Chad Lewis, and you had asked me the other day if I had a favorite panel, and I couldn't give you an answer then, and I don't think I can give you an answer now, because every panel is impeccably drawn to perfection.
Well, because they only have so much space, you've got to pack every single panel to symbolize 2 or 3 script pages.
Right, and I understand that, but I'm not talking about detail like that. I'm talking about, like, look at the drawings on the faces and the lines in the faces, and there's a shot at the end, the very final shot, and I won't say what it is, but it's just, the detail is just impeccable, right down to the small. There's a big figure drawn, and then there's these little tiny figures at the bottom, and the detail on all of them is just fantastic. So visually, this book, I'm glad I have it in my library just to flip through visually every once in a while. It's just really, really, really well done. I just wish that, first of all, I wish that they could have made it twice as long, because I felt like, they glossed over certain things that I'm sure were in more detail in the screenplay. But also, on a positive sign, I can see, because when he wrote it, he kept so much of everything in, even if it was supposed to be one panel, a 5-minute scene takes up 1 or 2 panels. It allows me this opportunity to see what Rod Serling intended. And very clearly, like, I don't feel, as much as I feel like I'm missing stuff because they had to cram it into these panels, I feel like I've got a much better understanding of what the Rod Serling script was.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that much of a difference between the structure and the tone from graphic novel to the film. The look of it, I can see, of course. But when you're talking the structure, I'm not seeing that much of a difference.
It's completely different. First of all, we have a lot more talking going on. The action scenes are really small. Now, if they had filmed it, they might have been, large and, as big a set pieces as the film that we ended up getting were. But in here, they're much smaller and they're not as important to the script. It's more a bunch of apes sitting around talking. I believe Dana Gould compares it to 7 Days in May, another Rod Serling script. It was more of that kind of.
Yeah, he made that
thing.
comparison in the previous panel that we were just talking about.
Okay, so maybe that's where I heard it. I wasn't sure if I heard it there or when I was talking to him, when I met him. But there's all this stuff about, Taylor almost getting a lobotomy, which is awesome. There's stuff about, the Cornelius stuff is cut down and his intention's very different. The way that the archaeology dig is handled is very different. And then the attack on the humans, which is here, is so much bigger in the film. And I feel like the reason they probably made the film less talky, because it is half the talking going on in the film, is because they wanted to appeal to kids. And that's probably why they changed the ending too. And after people read the book and they see the ending, they'll understand what I'm saying. So to me, my overall on the book is basically, I like the movie better, but I'm so glad this book is here, because it's a piece of history. Everybody's always wondering, what would Rod Serling's look like? Now we're given that opportunity to see it. And even if not every page is here, we can still, from what Dana Gould was able to do, and this had to have been hard for him, and I give him so much props, how he had to cut it down, he still gave us a true feeling of what that Rod Serling movie probably would have been. I just wish he had twice as many pages to do it in, because I feel like whoever set the page count hurt the book, because there's so much great stuff in this book that I wanted so much more.
Well, the page count was more of a budgetary thing, just like in the original film, which is why you don't get Rod Serling's version, because they're not going to have helicopters and tanks and trucks in the Franklin J. Schaffner film, because they couldn't afford it. You could have cardboard houses, and that was about it. But even when I was a kid watching the Planet of the Apes, I got kind of bored because there was so much talking in it. So when you say that the film was more of a action piece than this, I have to disagree on. And I loved the makeup as a kid, and it would the corn field chase, absolutely loved as a kid. The chase through Ape City is another action piece. But other than that, you have a little shootout at the end at the Forbidden Zone. But in and out of that, you have a lot of exposition and a lot of social commentary and a lot of talking scenes. That's why I say I don't see a huge difference between the film and the Rod Serling version.
From the point where Taylor is captured all the way to the ending, there's not really a lot of action. There's one scene where he escapes, but it's so short in the book, because they're limited in a graphic novel, page count, budget, or whatever it was that caused the page count to go down. But there's a lot of scenes of like Zira and Zaius talking, and Cornelius and Zira talking, and council members talking. And there's a big scene where, Thomas, I'm sorry, I said Taylor before. I'm going to probably keep saying Taylor, so if I do, I apologize. Where Thomas is talking and addressing a crowd of apes. There's just a lot of these kinds of scenes, and if you go back now that I've said this to you and you re-look at it, you don't have to reread it, just kind of skim through it, you'll see that there's a lot of examination going on. Whereas I feel in the movie, it's all there thematically, but I don't think that it's done in the same way. I don't think it's done with the same amount. I think the ratio of action to talking is very different in the movie.
Now, one thing that I really like in the film version over this version is that in the film, Zaius, he's the only one who knows that humans were once intelligent enough to speak. But here in this novel, we see the gorilla jail guard, and he starts to see traces of speaking humans and beats them silly. I like the idea of only Zaius having that one secret that could change everything.
See, I didn't get that. And that was another issue that I had, because there's this great picture of Thomas. I almost said Taylor again. Thomas lying on the ground, and he's written in words on the wall, "I can speak." And then it seems like that's never approached from that point forward. So I'm like, did the gorillas not see that? I mean...
Well, because I'm on that page right now, and I understand your confusion, but from what it looks like to me is that another humanoid had escaped from their cell, and the jail guard gets out their big power water hose and sprays them down, and all that splashing had smeared the "I can speak" in blood that was written on the walls.
Okay, now that I'm looking at it, I can see that. It wasn't exactly clear to me that that's what happened. And since there wasn't ever really any reaction from the gorilla to kind of say that the gorilla saw it, it wasn't clear to me whether he did or not. But because of stuff like this, I never really thought that the gorillas or anybody else knew about humans except for Zaius. And actually, what I thought was really great about this is I didn't even think Zaius knew up until the end. I believe that you kind of get a sense of it throughout the movie. But here, it's like all the way through it, I'm like, God, Zaius doesn't know about the humans. Zaius doesn't know about, the reality of humans. He doesn't know about it. But in the end, there's a point where you realize, oh, wait, he did.
Yeah, whereas in the film, when he's talking to Taylor outside of that courtroom in his own chambers, you get the idea that he knows what the potential of humans are, and he's there to squash that because he wants the apes to run supreme. So he's got an idea of what they're capable of and what can and may happen. It's not until the end of the film where you see, oh, he knew about the mama doll, and that's why he's so adamant about killing every human once they show any signs of intelligence.
I have to acknowledge that ultimately, after reading this graphic novel, I have a feeling that I probably would have loved the Rod Serling script, because there's so much in the graphic novel that I liked that I'm sure was probably expanded on in the script in more detail. I wanted more of it because I really liked all that stuff. But then I look at the Planet of the Apes movie, and I like all that stuff too, which basically should give us all a lesson. There's not one way of doing things. One person might take it and do one thing, and another person may take the exact same thing and do it completely differently, and they can both still be good. You don't have to be locked into one vision.
Oh, yeah.
I have a feeling I would have. I haven't read the Rod Serling script, but from what I'm seeing here, I get a feeling I would probably love the Rod Serling script. I applaud Dana Gould for what he's done in the pages that he's done, because it is a quick read.
And he's such a huge fan of Rod Serling that he was saying in the panel that it was very sacrilegious to cut out any word from Rod Serling's original script. But we got to do what you got to do.
And we'll talk about this when we talk to him, because I also, when I watched the panel, I got a sense that he probably would be on my side with this and wish he didn't have to cut a lot of that stuff out.
Oh, I'm sure Boom Studios would think the same thing, too. We wish we had $1 billion to produce this graphic novel, but unfortunately, we just don't, where it could have been the size of a Yellow Pages. Remember that? Yellow Pages? Does anyone here know what that means anymore? Yellow Pages? But it would have been very, very thick.
But to really, sum up my feelings about the book as a whole really quickly is, I'm really glad that they did it. I'm really glad that I read it. I actually read it twice. I enjoyed it more the second time, actually, because you and I had actually talked about certain aspects of it, and then I went back and reread it with what you were saying in mind. And I enjoyed it more the second time around. I think maybe my expectations were too high the first time, and so that added to, this feels like something's missing here. Whereas the second time, I kind of went in knowing what to expect. But I think the story's good. I'm really glad that we have it. It gives us an understanding of what Rod Serling would have given us. And I think it would have been a great movie. I would have loved to have seen this in movie form. It would have been a completely different movie.
If you really want to see it that badly, just watch The Return of the Planet of the Apes again.
But also, once again, just to reiterate, Chad Lewis's artwork is phenomenal. Any one of these panels, if you were to give it to me in a blown-up form, it would be a welcome addition to the things hanging on my wall.
Well, I know previously you said that you could not pick a favorite panel, but that's something that I wanted to ask you. If you could pick any panel from this, you're saying you couldn't pick your utmost favorite panel. If they said, Mark, you can have any panel you want, and we'll blow it up for you into a poster size and put it in a frame. There's nothing here.
If they were to force me to choose, I would either ask for the final panel, which I'm not going to describe here because it's the final panel. I want people to experience it. Or the one that you were talking about earlier with the monkeys crossing the street with the monkey bars. That is one of the funniest things, and it's not only one of the funniest things, it's one of the smartest things. And I'm curious to know if that's specifically in the script or if it's something that Dana Gould and the artist came up with, because it's just so perfect. That was the other thing I wanted to ask you about. I was really hoping they would utilize the technology more. And it doesn't feel like the technology is utilized very much.
Well, they didn't want it to be about the technology, so I can see them wanting to pull back on that.
But a little bit more hints towards it other than the artwork. I mean, we do hear the choppers coming, which is key to stuff.
Well, you do see this one gorilla soldier on his iPhone 6, so you can tell it's really dated.
But if you watch the movie, the design of the art design, the way everything looks is so key to the feel of the movie. And here, it just doesn't feel key to it. It almost feels like they did it because that's how the book was. And then somebody realized that the other way would be better. And that's a decision that the movie made that I liked.
Now, if Boom Studios had asked me, okay, Rich, you can have any panel here blown up poster size, what would it be? And I wish this book had page numbers so we could tell everyone where to go to. But it's right where Thomas escapes from Ape City, and he's now in the core city itself, and these kids are pointing him out, and you see a big, giant gorilla cop, and he's running toward Thomas. You can see so much power in this gorilla. You can see that if you're in this thing's way, you're not going to survive. This evokes so much power that it really stuck out to me. Right now I'm looking at it and I just can't turn away.
Hey, that little chimpanzee standing next to the little girl chimpanzee, the boy chimpanzee, next to the girl chimpanzee who says, "Teacher, look." Does that look like Gary Dubin to you?
And there's our Gary Dubin moment.
That would have been really cool if they had designed it to look like, have a Gary Dubin resemblance.
Now, there's two ape children, a little boy and a little girl. One should be named Gary, the other one should be named Dubin, because they are saying, "Teacher, look at that escaped man." One of them is played by Felix Silla, the other one is played by Gary Dubin.
Right.
Maybe they're both both being played by Felix Silla and they're both being voiced by Gary Dubin. So much potential there.
I don't know. It's really hard to choose the artwork though, because I'm flipping through it right now, and as much as those two that I said are very memorable, even this one that has an open door, it says Faculty T on it, and it's a very basic shot of a door slightly opened, is really cool because of the way it's what you see inside the door is drawn, and it's just a group of people, group of apes mingling, but it's just really kind of really subtly cool. And I'm going to look up this artist, I think, and I'm going to see what else he's done. I'm really impressed with it. Makes me even more want to see this done as a movie. I mean, it never will be, but
no, it was done as an animated series.
No, this book is much better than most of the animated series.
Well, not all. That goes without saying.
So I also found it interesting that at the beginning, some of the choices that were made, like in the beginning of the movie, the ship sinks in the water, but here the ship doesn't sink; it lands.
Right.
I love this shot of them finding the dead astronaut. It's so creepy. That would not fit in a movie that kids could go see.
And the book ends with some behind-the-scenes info on how the characters came to be and the anatomy of the cover art, which was done by Paulo Rivera. And there's also lots of notes from Dana Gould about how he came to certain decisions.
One more thing is, as I'm flipping through it, I noticed something. The Nova character. This was another character that was truncated a little too much for me because they treat her like a love interest, but we don't really get enough of her. And that was a little bit of a disappointment to me because I really like Nova.
All right, so Ape fans, if you haven't gotten Planet of the Apes Visionaries, go and get this now and see if you agree with me, you agree with Mark, or you're somewhere in the middle. You can get it at your local Barnes & Noble. Barnes & Noble's local. Come on, that doesn't exist anymore. Go to Amazon. Pick it up from Boom Studios. Adapted by Dana Gould. Artwork by Chad Lewis. And originally written by Rod Serling.
And check out your local bookstores if you have any, because Dana's been signing a lot out here, at least. And I know he's got at least one more coming up from the date that we're recording this. So who knows? He might be elsewhere signing. You might get lucky and get to meet him. He's a really good guy. I really enjoyed talking with him for the 5 minutes I had when I met him.
And as an icebreaker, mention that you are an ape listener for Talking Apes.
Right.
All right, Mark, that wraps up this episode of Talking Apes. We want to give a huge thanks once again to Alessandro Ago over at Visions and Voices at USC for putting on such a great 50th anniversary Planet of the Apes event. Now, like we've been saying, we have so much in store for future episodes since we made a lot of contacts these last few months. And Max Cervantes was recently at the Star Trek convention in Las Vegas and met with a potential future guest. Not going to say who it is, but maybe he can give his spin on the whole Felix Silla, Gary Dubin debate. And for more Vintage Apes news and stories, go over there to Simeon Scrolls at Planet of the Apes Goatley, that's GOATLEY.com, and theforbiddenzone.net. Also want to give a huge thanks to Angela Rushmere, who is, as always, doing a great job on our Facebook page, putting up pictures and behind-the-scenes photos I've never seen before, and Rob Dellinger, who composed our theme song. And if you want to hear more from Rob, go over there to his new website, the alpharhythmkings.com. And you can see where he's playing all around the country, he and his jazz band. And if you want to contact us, well, you can email us at apestv@skywalkingthroughneverland.com or on Twitter at Talking Apes TV. And as many of you ape fans know, you can go over there to our Facebook page where we post lots of really fun stuff. And if you haven't already joined me and my sweetie wife Sarah on our Star Wars Disney podcast, well, please join us at skywalkingthroughneverland.com. And Mark, this is the first episode where we're not going to be on RetroZap because we've formed our own network over there at Skywalking Through Neverland, and we're taking Talking Apes with us.
Cool.
So, until next time, this is Richard.
This is Mark. And before you say it, I want to let you know what you're going to say next without me even asking him. This is how Dana Gould signed my book. Go Ape.
Go Ape. All right, Mark, with that, we have a surprise. William Conlon and Tim Burton, just Burton.
So there were screenings, exhibits with props, costumes, and long promised coverage of the 50th anniversary of Planet of the Apes.
Apes. Hey, I'll do that one more time, but sound like you're excited about it.
Now, here in LA, USA had screenings of
USC, not USA.
USA.
So many bloopers on this. There's more bloopers. So many more bloopers than show content at this point.
It's been so long, I'm out of practice.
All right, now, from there, on February the 20th, there was the Beneath the Planet of the Apes and Escape. Nope. Now
you're screwing up.
Yeah. And there was a panel for the fandom and business of Planet of the Apes. And attending that panel was... That
was kind of the way that when... And that was when... What the hell's his name? Steve Zerlin? And coming this November, and our past guest, and our past... Okay, so this is not the longest episode we've ever recorded, by half an hour.
Hello, this is Tom Berman. I'm here with Talking Apes, and I was John Chambers' assistant on the very first Planet of the Apes, and as well as Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and I started the Escape from Planet of the Apes, but then I escaped. I'm Tom Berman, and you're listening to Talking Apes.
This is Lou Wagner, and you're listening to Talking Apes.